welcome to today's episode of Royal Journeys, where we chat to some of the great players and people who are or have been a member of the Essendon Royals about their journey in football. Today, we welcome former Essendon Royals junior and senior player and current Melbourne Victory WLeague, or should I say ALeague Women's champion, Polly Doran. Welcome, Polly.
Thanks for having me on.
So I guess we'll start with that name change. Obviously, just yesterday or the day before, the leagues announced that it's not going to be the W League anymore. Everything's coming under the ALeague banner, and I saw you actually discussing this on 10 News the other day. So, as a player in the league, are you happy to see all the top tier competitions sort of brought under that same banner instead of sort of being treated, I guess, as almost separate competitions?
Yeah, I think definitely it's an exciting step forward. It's definitely a step forward for the women's game in particular, just to sort of be recognised all under that one banner and sort of unify all the leagues under the A-League, which it should be. I feel like it's all the same game, and us as players, we feel like we deserve that recognition as well. That being said, the W League, I don't think anyone really had too many complaints about being called the W League either, but I think it's obviously a positive that they've put us all forward, and it's definitely a step forward, and it's exciting for the future.
And I mean, it comes at a time where obviously the competition's just been expanded. We've got teams from Western United, Central Coast, and Wellington Phoenix coming in. So is this a really exciting time to, I guess, be involved in the competition? And how good is it to see, I guess, these extra opportunities come for the female players in Australia?
Yeah, it's awesome. As you said, it's such an exciting time. We've got the World Cup, obviously, in 2023. And I think from now until then, the game's just going to really take off. And it already has in the last few years. So to continue that, and obviously the 3 new teams coming in before the 2023 World Cup, hopefully the league can become a bit more professional in its standards, maybe go full home and away season, and really try and push a lot of these Aussie girls forward. And I feel like in the league we've got a lot of girls that could play a part in that World Cup. So if we can sort of get an environment to push all those girls forward, then I think that's going to be the best.
Yeah. And I mean, it feels like we've been saying for a long time now, what an exciting time it is for women's football. I mean, you've come up in a time where, the Matildas have been doing really well. There's a lot of, I guess, coverage for women's football. There's just been so much inspiration for young girls to get out there and play the game. Tell us a little bit about, what got you involved in football in the first place.
Yeah, I have to look back on this, and it's hard to really pinpoint one thing. I think as a kid, I was just someone who sort of gave everything a go, and then I ended up, obviously I ended up at Essendon Royals, just randomly stumbled upon it at local clubs. So I wouldn't say none of my family really played or anything like that. It was just I kicked a ball one day and thought, oh, this is a bit of fun, so I kept doing it. But I think it was lucky the time I was growing up. We had the Matildas, that sort of era that started to get a bit more popular, and I could see these girls making a living out of playing. So I think that sort of motivated a lot of girls my age and even younger now. So to keep pushing on, and that's sort of an opportunity for them in the future, and it just keeps getting more and more publicity. So can only help.
And so you mentioned, obviously, you stumbled on Royal. So there was no connection there, or just the sort of a local club, and that's where you started, or?
Yeah, no. So pretty much just the local team. I'm not far from Ormond Park. So I think when I nagged my parents to sign me up somewhere, they just probably put in Google football clubs near here and then just signed me up there. But definitely a good result.
And I think last time we spoke was when you just signed for Victory, and you sort of spoke about, when you were 5 or 6 and you first came to the club, you were playing in mixed teams. Were you the only girl in those teams, or were there other girls involved at that time? What do you remember of those first couple of years?
I remember being one of the only girls, and it took a while for the boys were all really good at that time, though. There was no sort of, oh, don't pass to the girls or anything like that. It was always good. They always included us. I can remember 1 or 2 girls, but it was always dropping in and out. And it wasn't until we were in an all-girls team, probably around that under 12s mark, that we sort of, there was a group of us that almost went through from under 12s all the way through to the seniors team together. So yeah, it wasn't until then that more girls I started playing with, and yeah, but before that I was mixed in with the boys.
Yeah, and you mentioned there that you did rise through the ranks through the different junior age groups and eventually into the seniors. I think you made your debut when you were 14. So what's that, like year 7? I mean, what was that like? What was your experience with the coaches? Were you sort of encouraged to play above your age group once they sort of recognised maybe the talent that you had?
Yeah, I think even from the early age groups, I sort of always played up. I can't remember an exact moment where they sort of made that decision. I think it was just I was always sort of in that next age group, and yeah, it got to a stage where I was probably just turned 14, and I just sort of progressed all the way through to that senior team. Looking back now, I can't really believe that I did that because I would have been so little. But at the time, I thought that was normal, and I didn't really question it because I just thought that that's where I should be. So, looking back, it's pretty crazy to think about, but I'm definitely glad it worked out that way.
So was it a youngish sort of senior team that you remember those those first sort of couple of seasons that you were playing senior football? I know in 2016, obviously you won promotion from State League 2 into State League 1. What are your memories of that particular season?
Yeah, it was a pretty young team that I can remember. I do know that the group I sort of progressed through with were all sort of that 1 to 2 years older than me, and then there was a few similar age to me, and we sort of went all the way through the age groups, and then progressing into that senior team. I was playing both reserves and seniors, so that year we got promoted, and I remember I wasn't happy one game because I had all my friends in the reserves team and I wanted to keep playing with them, and I was going to play both games. And the coach pulled me off and said, "Oh, you've got to wait and play in the next game." I said, "Oh, just let me play both." But I think that next game was the one we actually got promoted. So I think it was lucky that he did take me off.
The good decision. So you obviously played, a lot of senior minutes very early between, playing reserves football, senior football. I mean, how important was that exposure for you at that early stage of your career for I guess what came next?
Yeah, I think, looking back now, it obviously was really important for me. I think at the time as well, I just loved it. I had so much fun playing. Like I said before, I didn't want to come off the field. I was out there with all my friends, and I just wanted to keep playing. And I think looking back now, that exposure to playing against bigger girls and sort of playing a different style than what you have in the juniors, it definitely has a big impact. And then it probably made me a lot more comfortable as I transitioned to NPL and then into WLeague. It was a pretty fast transition from Essendon Royals, then 2 steps forward. So I think I can credit the exposure I had in the seniors, which made me a lot more comfortable then to make that move and give me a bit of confidence in them other teams.
Yeah, and obviously there was an important step between Royals and then Melbourne Victory. So tell us a bit about your time at Calder United. What was that step up like in the early stages, and what were some of the things you had to learn to cope with at the NPL W level?
Yeah. Well, firstly, that was actually a really hard decision for me. Then I loved it at Royals, and all my friends were there, and the opportunity came to join an NPL team. And at first, I was questioning whether it was always something that I wanted to do, but I questioned whether that it was the right time to leave the club. And we had been doing so well, but I think at the end of the day, I was going to have to take that step. So I think at that age, it probably was the right thing to do now looking back, and I'm glad I did it. But my time at Calder was really good. It sort of exposed me to what a professional environment is like. That really got me ready for what WLeague would be like, because it wasn't long after, I think only 2 seasons in the NPL, and then I got picked up by Victory. So now I've got a lot to thank at Essendon Royals and at Calder for getting me up to Victory.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the story of your career so far. Very sort of quick steps and quick progression, and obviously Victory signed you in 2019. What was that moment like when you got to ink your first deal with a WLeague club?
Yeah, that was pretty surreal actually. I remember that whole year, I sort of I had to prove myself a lot in the NPL just because obviously I joined a pretty successful team already that had some very experienced players, and I was probably a few steps behind in a lot of aspects of my game compared to them. So I really had to work hard, and I wasn't really expecting anything more than NPL level. I didn't expect to get a contract that year at Victory, but I was lucky enough that they did offer me a contract, and I still remember that day. It was we all had to go into a room and pretty much get told if we were getting signed or not.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, when Jeff told me, I couldn't believe it, and I still, even thinking about it now, it's crazy.
Yeah. So, what was that first year like? Obviously, I think you made 8 appearances off the bench. How important were, those initial minutes for you? And what was the messaging for you in between, that first season and the second season? Because there was a massive jump in terms of minutes played, and obviously, you played in a grand final in your second season. So what do you remember of that first season, and what was the messaging for you in the off season to sort of, get yourself up to a position where you'd be playing every week?
Yeah. That first year, again, it was sort of, I knew that I was had a lot to prove in terms of my deserving to play and earning match minutes and whatnot. So I think that year was just about taking on as much information as I can. And I knew just throughout training and games, we had some really experienced players in the team. And speaking with the coaches, for me, it was just about slowly trying to progress and improve in small aspects of the game and try and get more experience. And I think I wasn't expecting to play too much. I was always pushing for it, but I think it worked out well, almost having that time where I could just really try and develop and learn as much as I can. And then I think that showed heading into the off season. The coaches had confidence in me that I could sort of take the next step and improve my game, and I knew that I had a lot to improve on. So what we had planned was to head back to the NPL and try and get a good season in the NPL, and then come back, hopefully play more minutes. But then COVID hit, and we were sort of in lockdown throughout that whole year, and the season didn't really go ahead as planned. But I think that sort of gave me an opportunity to really knuckle down and focus on my individual game. So I worked, every day I was working on different things, just down at the park on my own most days, training. And I feel like I just really grew a lot of different aspects, from technical side of it to game analysis. We watched a lot of videos, and in trying to get in the gym more, get faster and stronger. And I think that gave me good confidence then leading into pre-season following year to sort of show that and try and fight for a position.
Yeah, I think that's one of the remarkable things about, obviously, the amount of game time you got in that second season was, that off season where everyone would normally go and play NPL football and work on their game and get those match minutes at that level. You didn't get that in that first off season, for you. So it's interesting to hear you talk about using, I guess, that lockdown as an opportunity to work on your own game. You mentioned that you were at the park, you were working by yourself. How are you staying motivated? What sort of things can you do by yourself to just, for the younger people listening who are still, I guess, dealing with lockdowns, what are some of the things that, players can do on their own to take their game to that next level?
Yeah, I think for me, it was just important that I had sort of a target that I was aiming for. So for me, it was always be ready for that start of pre-season. And then from there, I just worked backwards and tried to focus on each day, what I could do. So I would do pretty much, I had a little routine going where every morning I would go down to the park and work on something different. So I worked a lot on ball control, just dribbling and just sort of footwork stuff. I think that's something that everyone can be doing pretty easily. You don't need much equipment at all, just a ball, really. So I'll do a lot of that. And then I just tried to keep fit, keep running, obviously keep up with the gym work, injury prevention stuff. And I would just try and little things, anything that I could work on, I would keep going. It's obviously a bit difficult in terms of motivation. I know a lot of kids would be struggling with that at the moment. But I feel like for me, I'm a pretty driven person, so that it never really entered my mind that I wanted to stop doing that. I sort of saw it as an opportunity that now's the time where everyone else has stopped, I can get better and I can sort of take 2 steps past other players and sort of improve areas that I had like weaknesses, and away from team training, that's when you can do it. So I'm looking back, it's left me in good stead, because I feel like that time actually probably benefited me.
Yeah. And obviously that second season was an amazing run for you. Started 14 games, including a grand final, which, Victory were ultimately successful in. What was obviously the whole season would have felt like a bit of a whirlwind, but that grand final night in particular, what was that occasion like?
Oh, that's, even looking back now, like I watch the highlights still all the time. They just I don't think I'll ever stop watching them. It's got to be like the craziest game that I've ever been a part of, and it's just it's crazy to think about, because I think all year the feeling in the group was that like we were a very tight knit bunch, and I think that made it a lot more enjoyable, because every week we generally just had fun, and we went out there, and I think that showed on the field, and we played well. And then into the grand final, it was just like everything you'd think. Well, I think we had 30 shots on goal and none of them went in. And it wasn't until right at the end, like I think we were just destined to win it. And I think we all knew that before even getting into the game. So we were just over the moon, and that's still probably the highlight of anything that I've done in my life so far.
Yeah. I mean, you've achieved an incredible accomplishment so early in your career. You've spoken about, you're quite a driven and motivated person. So having ticked that box off, this early, what do you set your sights on now? Is it, going back to back? Is it, some recognition within the national, team setup? What happens from here?
My goal's always been to play for the Matildas ever since I was young, probably at Essendon Royals. My goal would have been to get to the Matildas one day. So I think slowly that's becoming more of a possibility as I get closer and closer. So every day I just try and work towards that, whatever I can do that's going to help me get there. Obviously back at Victory this year, our goal is to win it again. And we have a pretty similar team again this year. So I think everyone's got like-minded in their ideas that we'll try and win that again, and just push on from there.
Yeah, you counted Lisa Vanna as one of your teammates last year, and obviously an absolute legend of Australian football, not just women's football. What was that? What was that like to share the field with her? What did you learn from her? Just generally, what was she like around the squad?
Yeah, she was awesome. I was a little bit starstruck when she first arrived. I've gone from watching her on the TV, and I think everyone would have idolized her growing up. Definitely I did. And at the start I was probably a little bit nervous and didn't really know what to say around her. And but as sort of she warmed up to all of us, I think her impact on the team was amazing, and not just on the field but off the field, just about setting standards and keeping professional environment and training standards. And I think she, especially the younger players, she pushed us all a lot. And we were really lucky to have her. And as you said, she's been massive for Australian football, just in general. So we were extremely lucky. Yeah,
and obviously your coach at Victory, Jeff Hopkins, another great of the game in Australia as a coach. What's that like working with him? What sort of role has he played in your development over the last 2 years?
Yeah, he's been massive. It's hard to explain. Like, I pretty much have to credit all last season and the change from the first season to my second season pretty much mostly to him, because he really focused on me individually and helped me on how I could improve and become a starting player. Obviously, I transitioned from a winger to a fullback. And him being a defender throughout his career, he gave me little pieces of advice here and there, and just gave me confidence in myself that I could play that role and have an impact in that position. So he worked a lot with me technically, and then also with video. We watched a lot of my games back individually.
Yeah.
Worked on positioning and decision making stuff, and
Mm.
I've got a lot to thank for him and what he did for me.
So how important is it as a player? I mean, do you go out and seek that feedback, or is that something that professional coaches just do? Do you ask questions around how you can improve, or do you rely on coaches to sort of tell you that?
I think you definitely have to ask questions. It's coaches can only do so much. It's whether
Yeah.
you're actually willing to take that on and listen and try and implement it, because there would be a lot of players out there that I'm guessing wouldn't be willing to take a bit of criticism and get shown probably what they're not doing right. Whereas for me, I wanted to see that, and I wanted to see what I was doing wrong, or areas that maybe I was lacking a little bit, because then I knew that then I could work on that and get better at it. And me and Jeff have a pretty good relationship where I feel like he can tell me
Yeah.
anything that he thinks I need to work on, and I'll go and try my best to fix that. So
Yeah.
I think definitely as a player you need to go look for it and then take it on board and try and fix any little issues.
Yeah. And speaking of coaching, I believe you're doing a bit of work with another former Royals junior in Diogo Ferreira, doing some work at DF Football. So tell us a little bit about, what's inspired you to, I guess you're still quite young yourself, but to maybe inspire some of the next generation, and what are you doing with DF Football?
Yeah, so that actually started out, I reached out to him in hopes of get some sessions for me. So when I was probably around 16 or 17, that's when I wanted to work more on the technical side of it. I felt like that was an area I needed to work a lot on, and I stumbled across his business, and I was lucky enough that he coached me for two years really, and he saw me from when I first joined NPL all the way through to now in the WLeague. So I've worked with him on my own for the last few years, and obviously his business has blown up recently. And it shows, because the standards that he sets at his trainings, it's as close to professional as you're going to get. So when he put the offer out there to jump on board and help coach, I couldn't really say no to that, because if I can help young players like he helped me, then that's going to be awesome. So hopefully that I can have the same impact on some young kids out there. And that's pretty much what we're doing.
Yeah. So you're working specifically with female footballers, or you're working with boys and girls?
I'm open to work with boys and girls at the moment. Obviously, I would love to work with young girls similar, just because I feel like with my experiences, they can sort of see how I've progressed through that, and I can share them experiences with them. But I'm working with both boys and girls at the moment, just doing 1-on-1 and 2-on-1 sessions, just with the restrictions and stuff at the moment.
Yeah.
But,
Beautiful. And you've mentioned that your I guess your big audacious goal you've set yourself is to to represent the Matildas one day. So you mentioned before we jumped on here that you were training with the Future Matildas program up in Sydney, in between ALeague women's seasons. What was that contact like? I know that the Matildas are playing a few games in Australia against Brazil coming up. Is that something you've set your eyes on?
Yeah, definitely. So up in Sydney, they've got a program running pretty much where girls from all around Australia go to Sydney, relocate, and live with. I was living with a host family up there, and a lot of other girls do the same thing. So we all live around a similar location and train pretty much full time. Obviously, the COVID lockdowns impacted that a little bit, and I had to come home early. But the time I was there was really good, just to be exposed to sort of a more professional environment through the off season. Was beneficial, I think, and hopefully that's given me a little bit of a step forward in terms of getting to senior Matildas soon. And it's definitely something I've got my eyes set on.
Fantastic. Well, obviously everyone at Royals wishes you all the best with that hunt for a first senior international cap. But before we let you go, we've actually received a couple of questions from one of our junior girls, Greta. So Greta plays in our under-10s team, and she's a defender like you. So she had 3 questions for you, so I'll go through those. One, what is the best thing about being a defender?
The best thing about being a defender, I'm only newly a defender, so this is tough for me. But I think just stopping the opposition from scoring. I think especially seeing other defenders do that, you sort of get a little bit more excited than almost if you were to score a goal. I think making a last ditch tackle or a clearance, it's going to save your team from conceding. I think that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. And her second question is, how do you handle the pressure of being a defender?
The pressure of being a defender, that's a good question. I think you just need to have confidence in the other players around you as well. Like for me, I'm lucky enough to have 2 really good centre backs and a very good goalkeeper behind me. So I think I have confidence in myself that I wouldn't let the attacker get past, but I know if I do, that I've got some really good players around me that would stop them. So I think that helps deal with a bit of the pressure.
Okay. And I know you're new to defending, but Greta wants to know, do you live for the tackle? And trust me, if you ever come down and see Greta play a game, Polly, you'll understand why she's asked that. But do you live for the tackle?
A good tackle is good. I'm going to have to come down and watch Greta. She sounds like a good player. So, yeah, I do. A good tackle is very good, and I hope to see you do one soon, Greta.
Fantastic. All right, Polly. Well, thank you so much for giving up some of your time and coming and having a chat to us. We really appreciate it.
No worries. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.